They say the Appalachian Mountains are older than human memory, ancient and alive in ways we were never meant to understand. Hikers talk about the silence out here, not peace, but the kind of silence that listens. Some see things just beyond. The trees, a flicker, a shadow, a shape that matches their own. Others follow trails that don't exist on any map, and some of them never come back. The forest has rules no one wrote, and if you break them, it remembers you. What you're about to hear comes from real accounts, stories that were never meant to leave the woods, but now they're here. And if you're listening, something might already be listening back. This is Farcical Fears, where the line between absurd and terrifying fades into the tree line. Subscribe for more true horror stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Let's begin. Let's move to our first story. I'm not someone who scares easy. I've done solo hikes for years, even spent nights alone in the Canadian Rockies. I've run into bears, slept through lightning storms. I don't rattle. But what happened to me on the Art Loeb Trail in North Carolina? Something still hasn't let go. I haven't hiked since it was late October, right around when the leaves start turning that deep red, like something bleeding from the branches. I had planned a 4-day loop starting near Black Balsam Knob. Weather was decent, nights a little chilly, but I had solid gear. My plan was simple: disconnect, clear my head, get back to what makes me feel human. The first day was uneventful, a bit of drizzle, but nothing worth noting. I passed a few groups early on, but by the afternoon, the trail had thinned out. That's why I like this time of year. Fewer people, just the sounds of the wind and the trees creaking like old floorboards. I made camp near a ridgeline with a decent view, boiled some rice, and turned in early. That night, I woke up once, a sound outside, not close, just something shifting in the underbrush, probably a deer. I remember sitting up in my tent, listening. Hard silence, then wind. I wrote it off. You get used to animals being curious. They'll sniff around and leave. I went back to sleep. The next morning, about 10 feet from my tent, I saw it, a little pile of rocks, a cairn. Nothing big. Maybe 6 or 7 stones, stacked neatly like a tiny chimney. Thing is, I hadn't seen it the night before, and I always check my sight. I'm obsessive like that. I know I would have noticed it. Still, I figured someone must have come through late. Maybe a night hiker, someone marking their route. Happens. I left it alone. The second day, the fog rolled in thicker. Visibility dropped fast, that heavy mountain fog that eats sound and makes everything feel like it's underwater. I kept moving, slower than I liked, but I didn't want to risk losing the trail. Somewhere around mid-afternoon, I stopped for a break and took a sip of water. And that's when I saw it again, another cairn. Same size, same structure, sitting just off the trail, nestled between 2 tree roots. I stopped and stared at it. It looked familiar, not just in the general way cairns always do, but in a way that scratched at something in my brain. I thought about the one near my camp. This looked identical, same shape, same sort of lichen on the stones, like they'd been weathered together. Still, I chalked it up to coincidence. There are a lot of cairns out here. They've been used forever to mark paths, sacred spaces, memorials. Could mean anything. That night, I set up camp in a more sheltered spot. Something felt off, though I couldn't say what. Just that weird tightness in your chest when your instincts start waking up. I cooked quickly and ate with my back to a tree. I don't normally do that, but I didn't like having the woods behind me. I didn't sleep well. I woke up around 3 a.m. My tent was cold, colder than it should have been, and silent, too silent. Not even the usual rustle of leaves. I stayed still, heart thudding, and that's when I heard it. Clack, clack, clack. Like stone tapping on stone. Very slow. Deliberate. It came from maybe 20 feet away, out past the edge of my fire pit. I didn't breathe. My hand was already on my flashlight, but I didn't turn it on. Some part of me didn't want to know. The sound stopped. Nothing moved. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then I slowly unzipped the tent flap and aimed my light. Outside. Nothing. I got out, swept the area with my flashlight. No animals. No people. But about 3 feet from where I'd boiled water earlier that night, there it was, a third cairn. Just like the others. Still damp. Stones recently disturbed. I didn't sleep after that. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I'd cut the trip short and head back early. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, just wrong. I needed to get out. I packed fast and started moving, tracing the way I'd come. But the fog had come back heavier, thicker. I kept checking my compass. My GPS wouldn't lock. The trail looked the same, but the same. Like I wasn't moving forward, just walking through the same 100 yards of woods, over and over. I started seeing more cairns. 5, 6, 7. One of them was directly in the middle of the trail. That's not right. No one stacks them on the trail. I stepped over it carefully, my chest tight. By noon, I realized I hadn't seen a single trail marker in over 2 hours. No blazes, no signage. I should have reached the old shelter by now, but everything looked unfamiliar. I sat down and tried to breathe. Then I heard it again. That clack, clack, clack. Slower now, closer. I stood up fast, turned in a circle. Nothing. The fog moved in unnatural pulses, like it was breathing. My ears started ringing. I kept walking. I came upon a clearing maybe an hour later. Dead center. I saw something that made my mouth go dry. It was a circle, not of stones, but of cairns. Maybe a dozen of them, each one nearly identical, all pointing inward, toward the center, where a single, flat rock sat, clean and clear, like an altar. I turned around and started walking the other way, but the trail behind me was gone. I swear to you, there was no sign I'd come from anywhere. No footprints, no bent grass, just more fog, more trees, and the faintest echo of rock clicking against rock. I started yelling, just a raw scream into the air. Nothing answered. I ran for a while, no idea how far. When I finally stopped, my legs burning, lungs seizing, I collapsed beside a fallen tree, and right next to it, another cairn. This one had something inside. I leaned close. Wedged between 2 of the stones was a scrap of red fabric, torn, weathered. I recognized it. It was from the shirt I'd been wearing yesterday. I hadn't ripped it. I was sure of it. But when I checked my pack, the shirt was gone, and my compass, it was spinning. I stayed there for hours, waiting for something. Night came again. The fog didn't lift. Some time past dark. I started hearing breathing. It wasn't mine. It came from just outside the reach of my headlamp. Low, wet, not animal. That's when I started talking. Out loud. I begged. I said I was sorry. I didn't even know what for. I just started apologizing to the trees, to the stones, to the trail. I told the forest I was leaving, that I wouldn't come back, that I didn't want to see whatever was stacking the stones. The breathing stopped, the fog thinned, and the next thing I knew, I was back on the marked trail. I don't know how. I got there. I don't remember walking, but there I was, standing in front of a wooden sign I recognized from the first day. I didn't question it. I bolted down the trail. Didn't stop until I hit the parking area near the base. My car was there. Everything looked normal. But when I checked the clock, something was off. It was 2 days later than it should have been. I'd been out there for 5. My food should have run out. My water too. But my supplies were untouched. Like I'd never used them. I filed no report. Who would believe it? I looked into it later, tried to find stories like mine, found message boards, old hiking forums. Nothing concrete, just rumors. Some users talked about seeing watchers in the mist. Others mentioned the circles and how you never step inside one. One guy claimed the cairns are warnings. Another said they're traps, that they mark people. Tag them like animals. Since then, weird things keep happening. Rocks show up on my doorstep. Small, stacked piles. I destroy them every time. But they come back. Sometimes just one. Sometimes more. Last week, I found one in my living room. I live on the 5th floor of an apartment building. I don't go hiking anymore. I don't even go near the woods. But sometimes, when I turn off the lights, at night, I hear it again. That same sound, clack, clack, clack. And I know whatever's out there didn't forget me. Let's move to our second story. They found the recorder wrapped in plastic, stuffed inside a rotted tree stump just off the Blue Ridge Parkway. It was half buried under leaves, covered in moss. No hiker had reported it. No one was looking for it. A trail maintenance crew stumbled across it while clearing storm debris near Craggy Gardens, deep, off trail, in a spot no one should have been walking through. No body, no backpack, just the recorder, a cheap one, the kind sold in truck stops. The batteries were dead, but the memory card still worked. What you're about to hear is a transcription of the audio log inside. It's been left unedited, even the long silences and static. The voice on the recording identifies himself only once, but the rest, it speaks for itself. Transcription begins October 3rd, 2022. 7:13 a.m. Man clears throat. Name's Carl Yeager. I'm out here on a private logging assessment for Harland Timber. Got a GPS tag on the location, marking audio entries as I go. Coordinates logged on the file header, in case the map data gets corrupted. Faint rustling, zipping sounds. I'm about 12 miles southeast of Mount Mitchell, deeper than we usually go. Real untouched territory. The company wants to see if the area is viable for expansion, especially with recent demand. I've been in this business 20 years. I've marked forest in Kentucky, Tennessee, even northern Alabama. Never seen a stretch quite like this one. It's thick, not just in trees, but in silence. Even the birds are quiet. And I swear, some of these trees look like they've grown twisted, almost braided at the roots. Never seen that before. Might be soil density or elevation. I'll note it. 7:41 a.m. Strange thing. I found an old logger's tape. The bright pink kind we use to mark trees, tied around a branch about 8 feet up. But it's brittle, some bleached like it's been here for years. Could be from a survey team decades ago. There's no record of anyone assessing this deep back then, but it's possible. Harlan's records weren't always digital. He chuckles. Might even be my old man's work. He cut trees up this way in the 70s. Wouldn't that be something? 10:12 a.m. Saw something odd. Real odd. About an hour off trail, I came across a clearing. Totally natural. No stumps, no tire tracks. Middle of it stood a single pine. Dead straight. Barely any bark left on it. But every inch of the trunk was wrapped in logger's tape. Hundreds of pieces, not just pink, orange, yellow, blue, all different ages and styles. Some were frayed, some looked brand new, but they were tight, wound like the tree was being held together. I took a picture with my phone. GPS wouldn't lock. Tried uploading it to the map app. It glitched out. Maybe there's iron under the soil. Messes with the signal. That happens. Still, I don't like the look of it. 11:55 a.m. Something's off with my compass. It keeps drifting. Not spinning, just slowly leaning west no matter which way I turn. I cross-checked it with the sun, and it's wrong. I've reset it twice. Also, I swear I just passed that same clearing again. The wrapped tree. I marked it on my map, and I've been heading away from it. But it's here again. Same tree. Same ribbons. Some of them are fluttering like theirs. Wind. But the air's dead still. I don't know what kind of joke this is. But I'm heading back to base camp. Enough for today. 3:07 p.m. I'm lost. No. Let me rephrase that. I'm disoriented. Temporarily. That's all. I've been in tougher spots. I've got enough supplies to last a few days. Water's good. Battery pack's charged. I'll retrace my steps tomorrow. What's bothering me isn't being lost. It's the sound. Or lack of it. The forest should have. Birds, bugs, creaking. But it's just this buzz, not like insects. More like feedback. A dull hum. Like a speaker left on somewhere far away. And it's constant. Makes my teeth itch. 4:12 p.m. the trees are moving. Not swaying. Not in the wind. They're rearranging. I marked a trunk with my knife earlier. 3 slashes, triangle pattern. Used to do that as a kid when I was helping my dad. I walked maybe 200 feet to collect a dry branch for firewood. When I came back, the mark was gone. I thought maybe I found the wrong tree. But then I saw the triangle on a tree 10 feet to the left. Same mark. Same depth, same angle. But on a tree I didn't touch. I checked the bark. It's fresh, no healing, no rot. The tree with the original mark, it's not there. 5:55 p.m. camps up. Fire's lit. But I don't feel warm. Not talking about temperature. I mean the usual feeling you get with fire, safety, comfort, light. This fire, it flickers wrong. The shadows go inward toward the flame. Not away from it. No one will believe. This, I'm not even sure I believe it. But I'll keep recording. That's all I can do. 7:10 p.m. There's a voice in the woods. Female. Soft. Almost singing. Too far to make out the words. But it's rhythmic. I yelled. No answer. I shut off my fire. Sat in the dark. Let my eyes adjust. The voice kept going. Same tone. Same pattern. But when I moved toward it, it stopped, like it knew I was coming. I don't think it wants me to find it. I think it wants me to chase it. 10:22 p.m. I saw someone. Just for a second. Across the clearing. Maybe 30 yards. A figure. Pale face. Long hair. No flashlight. Just standing still. Like they'd always been there. I called out. No movement. Then. I blinked, and they were gone. Not walked away. Not hidden. Gone. October 4th, 6:15 a.m. Still here. Still stuck. No trail in sight. I walked for hours last night after seeing that person, or whatever it was. Came across more tape. Logger's tape. This time it was tied around me. My backpack strap. I didn't put it there. It wasn't there an hour before. Bright orange. Clean. Brand new. October 4th, 7:33 a.m. I'm not even pretending I know where I am anymore. I climbed to the ridge. Not sure which one. They all look the same now. And tried to get a signal. Still nothing. No GPS. No bars. Not even emergency satellite. This place, it doesn't want me mapping it. I looked over the valley. I should be able to see the main trail. Or the river bend. Something familiar. But all I see is trees. Endlessly thick, uniform trees. Like a forest that loops. I shouted. I screamed. I cussed the whole damn mountain. But the only thing that answered was a whistle. One short, shrill note from behind me. The same pattern my dad used to use when calling me back to camp. Except he's been dead for 16 years. 10:12 a.m. The trees are moving. It's not just paranoia. I tied a pink strip of tape to one, just to prove it. Then I sat. For hours. Didn't move. Watched it. Every time I blinked, it would shift. Half an inch to the right. Then the left. Subtle. Like watching stars on a long exposure lens. I filmed it with my phone. When I played it back, static. Gray screen. No footage. I know what I saw. These woods are alive. Not in a natural, poetic sense. I mean conscious. And they are folding in around me. I don't think they'll let me leave. 12:27 p.m. I heard a chainsaw. Swear to God. Faint. Off in the distance. The way it revs and cuts, up down, like a rhythm. I ran toward it. Tripped 3 times. Nearly broke my ankle in a gully. But the sound kept leading me. Closer, then further. Then behind me. Always just out of reach. Eventually it faded. And I realized I'd come right back to the same clearing. The one with the wrapped tree. Only now, the tree is gone. In its place is a pile. A stack of bones. Clean. White. Arranged in a spiral. At the center a recorder. Not mine. It's identical. Same model. Same scratches on the side. I picked it up. It turned on. It had one file on it. It was me. Saying this exact sentence. I dropped it and ran. 3:49 p.m. I found a camp. Old. Rotten. Tarps sagging. Fire ring cold. Boot prints. Big ones. Work boots. Like mine. I thought maybe I stumbled across another. Harlan crew. Then I saw the tent. Inside. There were notebooks. All in the same handwriting. All written to me. I didn't write them. I swear. But they're full of things I haven't done yet. Things I haven't said. Will say. One page says, you'll read this after the 3rd whistle. Another says, burn the recorder. Another says nothing at all. Just has a drawing. A spiral. Made of bones. With a face at the center. My face. 4:58 p.m. I made a fire. Bigger this time. Burned the tent. The notes. Even the recorder. I thought maybe that would break the loop. Purge whatever this is. But as the plastic melted and the pages curled, I heard footsteps. Right behind me. Heavy. Careful. Not animal. I turned. And standing in the trees. Was me. Older. Gaunt. Same flannel. Same boots. But thinner. Like dry leather stretched over bone. He didn't speak. Just lifted a finger to his lips. Then he whistled. Once. And vanished. October 5th. 5:15 a.m. I haven't slept. The forest breeze at night. The trees don't creak. They inhale. You can feel it. If you lie still enough. I saw something above me as I laid down. Not the stars. Not the sky. Faces. Staring down through the canopy. Dozens of them. All pale. Stretched. As if pressed against invisible glass. Their eyes weren't angry. Or curious. Just empty. Watching. Forever. I think I know now why there's no birds. No bugs. Nothing living here but the trees. Because this place eats time. 7:42 a.m. I aged. I looked at my reflection in a puddle. My beard is longer. Patchier. My hands are shaking. Skin darkened like old tobacco. I think I've been here longer than I remember. Maybe weeks. Maybe more. The days blur. The sun rises too fast. Or not at all. Sometimes I blink and it's night. I found another logger's tape tied to a tree this morning. It had writing on it, not typed, not printed. Scratched in with a knife. It said, "Follow me home." 11:10 a.m. I followed the tape. Mile after mile, strip after strip. Bright orange, fresh, tied every few trees. Sometimes it doubled back. Sometimes it circled the same tree 5 times. Then I saw the sign. An actual signpost. Like a national park marker. Old, metal, rusted, but readable. It said, "Welcome to Looper's Wood, a place you never leave." I laughed. I laughed so hard I choked. Fell to my knees because I remembered something. A name from a story. A campfire tale we used to tell us kids. Looper's Wood. A cursed patch of forest that traps anyone who enters. A loop of memory. Of reflection. Of cells. Only way out is to forget who you are. I didn't believe it then. I do now. 3:34 p.m. I found another man today. He was sitting against a tree. Face gone. Eaten or rotted away. Just teeth and jaw left. But in his hand was a recorder. Same model. I didn't want to take it, but I did. When I turned it on, the first thing it said was, "Don't stop recording. It's the only way to stay real." That voice. It was mine. Younger. Happier. Like a version of me who hadn't yet seen the spiral. October 6th. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what year it is. Time in here folds. I have to keep talking, even when I don't know who I'm talking to, even when the recorder is full. I just speak over old files, because silence is when they come. The ones made of bark and bone. The shadows in the fire. The watchers above the trees. If you're hearing this, you've found the tape. You're in the woods now. Don't follow the tape. Don't listen to the whistle. And whatever you do, don't look in the water. It shows you what you'll become. Let's move to our second story. Part 3. Final October 6th. Late evening. Timestamp corrupted. I saw myself again. This time I was hanging. From a tree, 20 feet up. Neck snapped. Rotting. But still breathing. Chest rose. Fell. Rose. Again. In a slow, awful rhythm, like something had to keep it alive. Not for mercy. For mockery. I watched my own corpse twitch. It blinked at me. Then its mouth opened and it screamed. Not out loud. Not in sound. But in my head. Like it was peeling open the part of me that still remembered who I was. October morning. I'm giving up the calendar. It's useless here. The sun rises too fast. The shadows double back. I sleep and wake and sleep again, and none of it adds up. I walk straight for what felt like 8 hours, following a slope downhill, marking trees, counting paces, old forestry tricks. Eventually, I came across a cabin. Not old, not abandoned. My cabin, the one from the company's base camp, 15 miles north. Only it was wrong. To quiet, to clean. No ash in the fire pit. No boot prints. But the door was open. Inside, everything was identical. My journal, my pack, even my old thermos with the dent on the side. But when I picked it up, it was warm. Someone had just made coffee. Audio becomes faint, distorted for 45 seconds. Whispering overlaps. Repetitive phrases. He's in the walls now. Tape it shut. Don't say your name. Resumes, voice shaky. I made a choice. I sat in the cabin. Waited. Told myself I'd listen to whoever walked through that door. If they looked like me, I'd talk. If they were me, I'd beg. But the door never opened. The cabin folded. Quietly. One board at a time. Like collapsing origami. No wind. No noise. Just the whole place. Sinking into the ground like it was never there. Left me standing in the dirt. with an empty thermos and a recorder that won't stop repeating the same word, looper. 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 Final entry. Unknown time. Battery low if anyone ever finds this tape. Don't bring it back. Don't share it. Don't listen too long. Because this forest, this loop, it's not just trapping people. It's copying them. Over and over. There are hundreds of me here. Some are kind. Some are broken. Some are hungry. I've seen what I become if I stay. Bone and bark. A whisper in someone else's head. The trees aren't trees. They're memories. Tangled into root and soil and sinew. They feed on identity. Strip it down like bark. Wrap you up in ribbons so you forget what direction is. I don't know which version I am anymore. But I'm not staying. I'm going to follow the spiral. Burn myself clean. Maybe then it'll end. Maybe then the next voice that plays on this recorder will be yours. Brief silence if it is run. Let's move to our third story. The Girl from Widow's Cradle. A Southern Gothic tale of missing children, folklore, and a mountain that sings when no one's listening. There's a place deep in the Blue Ridge that folks pretend doesn't exist. They call it Widow's Cradle, though no map marks the name. No signpost points the way. Only whispers pass from old lips to young ears. Always with the same warning. Don't go looking for the hill that rocks, because it does. Not with earthquake or wind, but with something older. A slow, aching rhythm in the soil. A lull, a cradle. And if you listen too long, you'll fall asleep. You won't wake up. Or worse, you do. But you're no longer yourself. This story starts with a woman named Cassie Langford, a geologist and research analyst, hired to study terrain irregularities near Avery County, North Carolina. Educated, confident, scientific. She didn't believe in ghosts or witches or Appalachian curses. She believed in rock layers, seismic graphs, and predictable truths. She came to Widow's Cradle with gear, permits, and a very particular goal: to prove that the strange disappearances and reported visions in the area were symptoms of magnetic distortion or toxic environmental factors. She came to bring answers. What she found was something ancient and awake. The first night passed without issue. Cassie camped near a hilltop she named Point Echo, a long, sloped rise where the wind traveled in circles. It hummed at night. She noted this with fascination, even admiration, calling it a natural acoustic anomaly. She recorded the hum on her handheld device. Later that night, she replayed it. The audio was corrupted. The hum now sounded like a woman's voice, singing in a broken minor key, low, swaying, and motherly. The words were unintelligible. But the tune? It was a lullaby. Day 2, June 6th, 2022. Cassie began experiencing interference with her equipment. Compass needles jittered. The GPS lost signal for 2 hours straight. When she checked the time on her watch, it was always a few minutes behind her phone. She found this exciting. She didn't feel fear. Not yet. That afternoon, Cassie followed a dried creek bed and discovered something buried in the moss, a child's shoe, untied, size 2, blue, with a faded cartoon raccoon on the side. It matched the shoe described in the case of Aaron Mathers, a 5-year-old boy who disappeared 2 weeks earlier. She bagged it as evidence. A few feet away, she found rocks, arranged in a spiral, neatly, deliberately. She took photos, disturbed the spiral with her boot, and moved on. Later that night, while reviewing footage in her tent, Cassie caught movement behind her in the frame. The spiral had returned, rearranged exactly the same way. She hadn't heard a sound. She slept with her knife under the pillow that night. Didn't help. Journal entry, June 7th. Something outside the tent last night. A dragging sound, not an animal. to steady, and a voice not quite human, not quite a whisper. She was humming. It came from all around me, like the trees were singing. I'm going deeper tomorrow. I have to know. Cassie moved toward the heart of the region known locally as Widow's Cradle, named for a rock formation shaped like a hammock suspended between two ridgelines. Or at least, that's what the locals used to say. But there's no such formation now, just a hollow, where sound doesn't echo, and the air feels wet even when the sky is clear. Cassie arrived at this hollow on the evening of June 7th. She set up her camera on a tripod and stood in the clearing. The footage is still preserved. In it, Cassie says, "Something's off about the ground here. I feel like it's vibrating, like a heartbeat." She reaches down, touches the soil, and freezes. There's a tune under it, a vibration in a melody. It's not wind. It's not water. It's music. Then she turns toward the tree line and goes silent. There's someone watching me. She walks forward, out of frame. The recording continues for 3 more hours. Just before it ends, you hear a child's voice on the wind, shhh. She's rocking us now. Cassie never returned. Her tent was found intact. Her boots were placed beside her sleeping bag. Her phone was wiped, but her handwritten journals were left behind. Dozens of pages in increasingly erratic handwriting. One entry is repeated over and over. She rocks us to sleep. She rocks us to sleep. She rocks us to sleep. Locals say the forest remembers her now. They say her voice joins the lullaby on cold nights. But this isn't just about Cassie. It's about the legend that's older than her. The one barely whispered. Outside church circles and moonshine gatherings, the legend of the widow of the cradle. Long ago, back in the late 1700s, there was a midwife named Miriam Ferris who lived alone in those hills. She lost her husband in a logging accident, her son to a fever, and her baby to the cold. One by one, death took everything she loved. Locals claimed she went mad with grief. Said she carved a cradle out of oak and lined it with stone. That she rocked it day and night, humming lullabies to ghosts that weren't there. Children started disappearing around that time. Always in summer. Always under full moons. No bodies were found. Only shoes and a single strand of gray-black hair wrapped around tree branches. They found Miriam's cabin burned to the ground, but not her body. The only thing left behind was the cradle. Still rocking. Still humming. Some say her spirit never left. Others believe she became something older, a wound in the earth, feeding on loneliness. Cassie's footage suggested as much, because on the night she disappeared, she recorded something else, never shown to the public, but described in detail by investigators. The last frame of the corrupted file showed a girl, pale, barefoot, no eyes, standing beneath a tree shaped like a woman leaning over. Both were humming in unison. Since Cassie's vanishing, more strange reports have surfaced. Campers hearing a woman singing their name through closed tents. Children waking up with dirt under their fingernails, saying they played with Rosalie. A search dog that came back blind after entering the hollow. No physical evidence. No footprints. Just fear and fog and stories that cling to your ribs like mold. And still, the lullaby continues. No lyrics. Just that haunting tune, rising like steam from the ground, curling through your ears when you're alone too long. Locals say the widow is lonely. She doesn't mean harm. Not at first. She just wants company. Wants to rock something. Wants you to fall asleep to her song and forget who you are. They say Widow's Cradle is the womb of the mountain, and those who enter it don't die. They're undone. Their names unstitched. Their memories swallowed. Some come back as empty things, still walking, still breathing. but they don't remember how to speak. They hum instead, low, gentle, familiar, as if rocking something inside them that isn't theirs. A ranger once tried to burn the place. He said he saw Cassie's reflection in the stream, smiling. She asked him to stay. He poured gasoline on the ground, lit the match. The flame went out in his hand. He hasn't spoken since, only stares at the tree line, humming. So, if you hike near Avery County, if the forest suddenly gets quiet, if the ground begins to sway, don't listen. Don't hum along. Don't follow the girl in white. Because once the widow starts rocking you, you won't want to leave her cradle ever again. End of story 3. The Girl from Widow's Cradle. Let's move to our fourth story, The Red Lights in Maple Shade Hollow. A chilling investigation into a local legend that's been erased, rewritten, and returned with glowing red eyes in the fog. I want to warn you, this isn't a story that wraps up cleanly. No satisfying twist. No culprit caught. If you're expecting a traditional horror tale with a sharp ending and a clear villain, you won't find it here. What I'm about to tell you was pieced together over 2 years. From field interviews, forgotten VHS tapes, and testimony that most of the people involved now claim they never gave. You won't find Maple Shade Hollow on a standard GPS, but it exists nestled between Spruce Pine and Burnsville, North Carolina, not far off an abandoned fire road that even locals refuse to use past sundown. There's no cell signal out there, no marked trails, just silence and fog and a story that keeps happening. The story of the red lights. It began for me with an interview. I was working on a documentary series about obscure Appalachian legends. I'd covered the Brown Mountain Lights, the Bell Witch, even the Greenbrier Ghost. But I hadn't heard of the red lights of Maple Shade until I sat down with a retired ranger named Carl Hewitt. He lived alone in a one-room cabin off 197 South. Weathered, big hands, clear eyes, the kind of man who didn't speak unless he meant every word. He told me he'd worked the region for over 30 years and only saw the lights once. That was all it took. He said, "I don't go up there anymore. I don't talk about it. I'd appreciate it if you didn't use my name." I didn't honor that request. They don't act like animals. Don't act like people either. It's like they see you before you're even there. Like you wake them up. I watched a grown man walk straight into the hollow in daylight and come back out 2 hours later blind in both eyes. Said he'd been looking at the sun, but it was overcast. Those lights, they burned from inside. I asked him what the lights looked like. He said, 2 red eyes. But not eyes. Lights, orbs. Whatever you call them. Always floating. Always watching. Sometimes close together. Sometimes far apart. But always there. At the edge of the fog. That's when I knew I had to go up there myself. Field Journal. October 12th. 20-1 Maple Shade Hollow is like a wound in the forest. The trees bend toward it. The trail dips unnaturally, like something heavy is pressing down from above. I camped just outside the area Carl marked on my topo map. Didn't sleep. Heard a distant humming all night. Low, rhythmic, almost like someone breathing through reeds. Just before dawn, I saw the first light. Red, bright, floating about 4 feet off. The ground pulsing slowly. Then it blinked out. No sound. No movement. Just gone. I convinced myself it was static discharge or some trick of early light. That was the last time I doubted what I was seeing. The next few weeks were consumed by research. I went deep. County records, newspaper archives, missing persons, cases, oral histories. A pattern started to form, one nobody had bothered to stitch together before. 1893, 2 children vanished from a farm near Maple Shade Hollow. Their boots are found side by side in the dirt. No prints leading away. Locals blame wolves. 1928. A traveling preacher named Elijah Mercer is found naked and raving at the edge of the hollow. His eyes are gone, sockets scorched. He dies after. Scratching a phrase into the dirt with his fingers, the red eyes watched me sin. 1964. A film crew from Asheville tries to make a local horror short in the hollow. 3 members go missing. Their handheld camera is found weeks later, wrapped in burlap and hanging from a tree. The tape is intact. It shows nothing but fog and a rising red light. The crew's bodies are never recovered. 1997. High school students record a dare video. Only one returns. She's silent for years. In 2014, she takes her own life. The coroner's report notes burns on her retinas as if from direct exposure to high-beam LED lighting. The tape is never found. But here's the strangest part. Each time, the red lights are described the same way, floating, silent, watching. Always just outside the line of sight. Always appearing when someone enters the hollow with bad intent. Stealing, lying, cheating, harming. One old woman I spoke to, a local folklorist named Mrs. Eliza Talley, had a theory. She said, "Those lights ain't lights. They're judges, not ghosts, not demons. Just justice, the old kind, from before. Lawmen, from before time. Maybe." I asked her what they do when they judge you guilty. She just said, "They look into you." I returned to the hollow one last time in November. This time, I brought 2 people with me. David Morley, an environmental acoustics expert, and Leah Benton, a local psychic and folklorist. We set up base camp just outside the depression where the lights are said to appear. David deployed audio gear calibrated to pick up infrasonic frequencies. Leah did what she called a reading of the area dot at 3:12 a.m. The fog rolled in thick dot at 3:19 a.m. Our cameras picked up movement to red orbs, hovering 12 feet apart. No source. No reflection. Just light, bending around nothing. David approached them first. He was calm, almost entranced. He stepped forward with his arms out, as if in welcome. Then he fell to his knees. When we got to him, his eyes were wide and unfocused. He kept repeating, "I saw myself. I saw what I did. I buried it, and it came back. I buried it, and it came back." He never explained what he meant. He quit his job 2 weeks later, moved to Arizona, won't answer my calls. As for Leah, she stared at the lights and wept, not in fear, not in awe, in remorse. She said, "They know what we won't say out loud, that this land remembers every secret." And then she fainted. We left at sunrise. When I reviewed the footage, the lights weren't on camera, but the audio was a deep, pulsing hum. Subharmonic. Almost like breath. And beneath it, whispers. Thousands. Layered over each other, you can't make out words. Just emotion, anger, regret, shame, judgment. The sound of being seen. I spent the next year trying to find a rational explanation. I reached out to universities, independent labs. I sent the audio to a friend at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. Nobody could tell me what it was. One man, a physicist from Oak Ridge, called me late one night and said, "It's like they're measuring us. Not speaking, measuring. Like sonar, but moral." He never called again. The most compelling theory came from a Cherokee historian named Noah Libow. He told me Mapleshade Hollow sat on what the elders once called a silent path, a crossing place where spirits passed through but never lingered. He said, "It's not meant for the living. And when the living enter it with poison in their heart, the hollow shows them what they hide. Not for punishment, for removal. I asked him why so many vanish. He said, some people see their truth and can't come back from it. Some stay behind and become part of the hollow. There's no scientific closure here, just patterns, testimonies, and that sound, the hum of something alive and ancient and cold. I've since abandoned the documentary. Too many doors opened, too many eyes watching. But if you go near Maple Shade Hollow, remember this: don't lie to yourself. Don't enter that fog with sins in your mouth, because the lights will find you. They'll show you everything you've tried to bury, and you might not come back the same. If you come back at all. End of story 4. The red lights in Maple Shade Hollow. Let's move to our 5th story, the witch tree in Widow's Gap. A traveler's encounter with a cursed tree leads to a grotesque unraveling of body, mind, and the land itself, in a place where something old still waits to be fed. My name's Eli Dawson, and if anyone finds this journal after I'm gone, burn it. Don't read it. Don't try to understand it, just burn the damn thing and forget you ever saw the words Widow's Gap. But if you do read it, let this be your warning. There's a place in the Appalachian backwoods where the trees don't belong to the earth, where roots grow upward and the bark is soft like skin. And if you touch the witch tree that grows in the heart of Widow's Gap, it'll remember you, and it will come for you. I should have died in those woods. One wish I had. It started in early May of 2022. I was on day 5 of a solo hike along a primitive loop trail that hadn't been maintained in decades. The map called it Crowknife Spur, but locals I met in Tellico Plains just shook their heads when I mentioned it, said it had been closed for good reason. You going near Widow's Gap, you best leave a piece of yourself behind. That land always takes something. One old man told me outside a gas station. I laughed it off, thought he meant broken ankles or busted egos. But he wasn't talking about injury. He meant flesh. Memory. Sold out. The trail got gnarly about 10 miles in. Overgrown switchbacks. Hollow animal sounds. Trees twisted like they'd been yanked from the dirt and jammed back in upside down. On the 3rd night, I camped beside a dry creek bed choked with old iron and bones. No animals. No insects. Even the birds were quiet. I was packing up my tent at dawn when I saw it. The tree. It stood alone in a clearing where no light should have reached, yet the sun bent around the canopy to shine directly on it, like a spotlight on a stage. It was tall, far too tall, and narrow like a finger. The bark was gray-pink and looked almost alive. It pulsed when I got close, like it was breathing. And in its trunk, about chest height, was a hole shaped exactly like a screaming mouth. I don't remember reaching out. My hand just moved, drawn forward like it wasn't mine anymore. The second my skin touched the bark, I heard a voice whisper from deep inside the wood. We remember. My nose bled. My eyes rolled back. I passed out. I woke up hours later, lying in the dirt, my hand blistered and sticky with black sap. My left ear was bleeding. There was something moving under the skin of my forearm, like a worm tunneling just beneath the surface. My compass needle spun in place. The GPS showed me miles off trail even though I hadn't walked a step. The tree was gone. Or maybe it never moved. Maybe I had. I stumbled through brush and bramble, trying to reorient. Every tree looked the same, too straight, too tall, too silent. No animal paths. No scat. Just that quiet. The kind that pushes against your eardrums until you think you're underwater. That night, I camped in a thicket. I didn't sleep. Something was moving in the woods. Not walking. Not running. Dragging. Something heavy. Rhythmic. Wet. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that screaming hole in the tree, and the voice whispering, "We remember." The hallucinations started on day to dot faces in the bark. Whispers in my left ear. The one that bled. My skin itched constantly. Like something was trying to crawl out. My fingernails blackened. My breath smelled like iron and rot. My teeth felt loose. But the worst part was the dreams. In them, I stood, naked in front of the tree as it wept black sap from its eyes. My body opened like bark peeling, and roots poured out of my chest. I could feel the dirt swallowing me, could taste the soil in my mouth, could hear voices chanting in a language I never learned but somehow understood. The seed must grow. The flesh must bind. The gift must return. I tried to turn back. No matter which direction I walked, I circled back to that same clearing. But the tree wasn't there anymore. Instead, it moved through the woods like it was following me. Always nearby, never seen. Just the heavy drag, the sour wind, the pull in my chest. And every night, new growths on my body, calluses like bark, hair, turning brittle like dead pine needles. My hand, the one that touched the tree, it was stiff now, fingers curled inward like roots. I couldn't feel it anymore. On the 5th night, I met another person, or at least, I thought I did. He stepped out from behind a tree as if he'd been carved from it. Tall, thin, dressed in clothes, decades out of time brown suspenders, muddy boots, a hat too small for his skull. His skin was the same color as the bark. His eyes were solid black. He smiled. "You touched it," he said. "You heard it. That's good. It's hungry. It remembers you." I couldn't speak. The tree's been waiting every 50 years. It wakes, needs new bark, new blood. That's how it stays fed. That's how we stay alive. I asked him who he was. He said, "I was you. Once. I ran. Didn't stop for hours. Fell. Cut myself. Left blood on every rock and root behind me. But no animals came. No scavengers, not even flies. The forest didn't want anything else. Just me. Day 6, my fingernails fell off. My hair began to come out in clumps. My reflection in a pool showed my left eye had gone completely black. I wept, prayed, screamed. No answer except the wind whispering. We remembered. By the 7th day, I stopped trying to leave. Something inside me changed. My thoughts weren't. Mine memories bubbled up that didn't belong, names I didn't know. Places I'd never been. A woman in a black dress standing by a well, singing to something below. A child laying roots in the shape of a man. A ritual, a sacrifice, a feeding. The tree wasn't just cursed. It was planted. Grown from the flesh of 13 hanged women. Witches, they called them. But not for magic. For revenge. They were bound in chains made from the bones of their lovers. Buried standing up, facing east. Mouths sewn shut with iron thorns. Their hair woven into the soil. And from them, the tree was born. Every 50 years, it feeds. Every 50 years, it grows another. And this time, it picked me. Day 8. I stopped walking. My legs were too heavy. I could hear the roots moving under. The soil whispering my name. I looked at my reflection in the knife blade. No whites in my eyes. Just red. No lips. Just bark. No breath. Just wind through branches. The tree wasn't behind me anymore. It was inside me. I write this now with what's left of my mind, my body barely human. I don't know if I'll survive the night. I don't know if I should. But if you find this, and you're reading it in the woods, drop it. Run. Forget you ever heard the name Widow's Gap. Don't try to find the witch tree. Because if you see it, it's already too late. And if you touch it, it will remember you forever. End of story 5. The Witch Tree in Widow's Gap. Trail 93 doesn't exist. 5 hikers vanish on a trail that isn't on any map. but whose legend is whispered in every ranger station along the Blue Ridge. This is the recovered account of the 6th, the only one who made it back, and wishes he hadn't. My name is Casey Rowe. I worked as a seasonal forest technician with the U.S. Forest Service from 2016 to 2021. I don't know how long this letter will stay up before someone pulls it down. Maybe a few days, maybe an hour. But I need to get this out while I still have a name, while I still remember what's mine and what isn't. You've heard of Trail 93. Even if you haven't heard the name, you've felt it. The place you skipped while hiking for no reason you could explain. The turn off that didn't feel right. The rusted sign you swore you saw from the corner of your eye but couldn't find again when you went back to look. That's Trail 93. The trail that doesn't exist. This all started in late September of 2020, just before the season closed. I was based out of a ranger station in the southern Appalachians. I won't name it, but if you've spent any time between Murphy and Asheville, you've driven past it. I was with a team of volunteers tasked with trail cleanup and marker audits. There were 6 of us, me, Claire, a botanist from Clemson, Rick and Jana, a married pair of environmental science grads from Colorado, Levi, a local trail runner, and Miguel, a quiet guy who mostly filmed everything for a YouTube doc project on missing hikers. Ironic. In hindsight, we were covering a lightly trafficked portion of the ridge, old CCC trails. Nothing maintained. The sort of territory where you lose cell signal and feel like the forest doesn't want you there. About a mile past a logging ruin, we found it, a wooden trail marker, rotting, faded, leaning like it was ashamed to stand up straight. All it said was 93, painted in a smeared, almost angry-looking black. No other signs. No map pin. Not on GPS. Not in archives. I checked every state and federal database afterward. It's not real. But it was their dot. Levi wanted to follow it. Said he'd heard old-timers talk about a phantom trail that showed up sometimes. Claimed it led to a clearing full of old headstones and iron tools stuck in the earth like stakes. Claire laughed it off. Rick and Jana were nervous. Miguel just kept filming. Me. I should have stopped them. I was the only employee, the one who signed the log. But I didn't. I wanted to see it too. The path was narrow and darker than it had any right to be. Pine needles so thick it muffled our steps. It didn't feel like walking a trail. It felt like entering something's mouth. Every tree leaned slightly inward. Every branch seemed to still dot. After about an hour, we started finding things. First, a hiking boot. Moldy, partially buried, with what looked like claw marks on the side. Then a GPS device, cracked, out of battery, wrapped in duct tape with a note on the back. It said, "North doesn't help. Follow the red man." We thought it was a joke. Some LARP or ARG setup. Miguel filmed it with excitement. None of us were laughing. An hour later, the sun dipped, but our watches still said 3:40 p.m. Claire's compass spun in slow, lazy circles. The trail signs changed, just barely, not new symbols. But every time we passed a marker, it looked different. The paint darker, the wood more warped. And instead of 93, it now said 9-3-9. We took a break. Jana threw up, said she felt pressure in her ears. Rick started humming and didn't seem to know he was doing it. Miguel's camera battery, which had held all day, dropped from 85% to 3% instantly. And it stayed there for the next 4 hours. Never died. Just sat at 3%. Red light blinking like a heartbeat. We hadn't seen a bird since we left the main trail, or heard one. We decided to turn back. Only, there was no trail behind us. The way we'd come was gone. It didn't end. It just wasn't there. like the forest closed over it. I marked a tree with a knife. We walked 20 feet. Found the same tree again, same cut, same knot. That's when Levi panicked and ran. We chased him, calling his name. Found his headlamp an hour later, cracked open like an egg. The bulb was still glowing, dim red. No sign of him. He's still missing. That night, we camped in silence. The temperature dropped by nearly 30 degrees in 3 hours. We were freezing, even with gear. Then, around 2 a.m., we saw it. The red man, he stood just at the edge of the tree line, unmoving. Red hoodie. Hood up, face in shadow. But his limbs were wrong. Too long. Elbows that bent the wrong way. Legs that never seemed to touch the ground, just hovered an inch above it. He never came closer. But he never left. He stayed there the whole night. Even when we closed our eyes. Especially when we did. Rick disappeared the next morning. His sleeping bag was zipped shut from the outside. No tracks. No struggle. No sound. Just gone. Claire lost it. Said we weren't supposed to be here. That 93 wasn't a number. It was a gate that locals used to bury dolls along its entrance to keep it. Jana started cutting her arms, not deep. Just shallow slashes, over and over. Muttering, I can't bleed here. I can't feed it. She tried to burn her own boots. Said if she didn't leave something behind, she wouldn't be allowed to leave. Day 4. We stopped finding water. Every stream we came across was filled with thick black muck. The trees had grown closer. I don't mean denser. I mean they had physically moved. Our tents were being pushed inward, pressed together. At night, something dragged across our nylon walls. Scraping, clicking. Miguel kept filming, even when Jana vanished during a bathroom break. He didn't speak, didn't eat, didn't blink. When I looked in his eyes, I saw the reflection of someone behind me, but no one was there. That night, I dreamed of a spiral carved into the ground. Inside it, a man with no skin and a mouth that never closed was crying tears made of centipedes. He said, once you're marked, you belong to the trail. I woke up with a spiral cut into my chest. Miguel was gone. Claire and I made a run for it on day 6, picked a direction and went. Didn't matter which. The forest shifted. Terrain repeated. Trees echoed. Claire kept whispering, it won't let us leave with our minds. We have to forget. Then she stopped, smiled. And walked into the woods. Didn't look back. Didn't even scream. I walked alone for what felt like days. Stopped keeping track of time. Stopped recognizing my thoughts. Until, finally, sunlight. I stumbled out into an access road near a fire tower. Collapsed into the arms of a volunteer fire crew doing a controlled burn nearby. They took me in. I said nothing. What could I say? I was one of 6. I came back alone. The investigation didn't last long. No evidence of Trail 93. No trail markers. No GPS logs. Not even the marker photos Miguel uploaded survived. All corrupted. The families screamed at me. Said I led them to their deaths. Maybe I did. It's been 3 years. I've changed my name twice. I live on flat land now, nowhere near trees. But I hear them sometimes, creaking, breathing, calling me back. And I know one day, when I'm weak enough, I'll go. I'll find 93 again. Because once the trail marks you, you're never really off it. End of story 6. Trail 93 doesn't exist. The Sleeping Hollow of Bear Ridge. My name is Ruth Holloway. And if you're reading this journal, then I didn't make it out of the Bear Ridge Basin. I need you to understand something before you get too far into this. I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't delusional. I didn't come to the Appalachians to vanish. I came to study the land for my PhD in Appalachian folklore and linguistics. What happened to me here? It's not in any archive, not in any book, because this part of the ridge hides its truths, and it guards them with something older than language. This began as research, but now it's a confession, or maybe a warning. I don't know anymore. I arrived at the edge of Bear Ridge just after the autumnal equinox. That matters more than I realized. There are dates that mean something in this place, though not to a clock or calendar. They belong to the woods, to the earth, and to the thing that sleeps beneath it. I came to investigate a string of undocumented regional dialects, backwoods speech patterns that didn't trace to Scotch-Irish settlers or the Cherokee. Locals called it hollow speech, spoken in low mutters, almost chants, by certain isolated families near the basin. Phrases like tree-bound or tongue-folded or sleeping root. No one knew where it came from. No one would explain it to me. When I asked, most people laughed or muttered and walked off. One old woman spat on my shoes and said, "Don't look the hollow in the eye." I thought it was metaphor. It wasn't. Bear Ridge is a place the maps forget. A natural depression tucked behind four ridgelines and a granite fault line. A geological bowl where the light doesn't stay the way it should. I'd rented a remote cabin from a man named Harris. Never met him in person. He left the keys under a stone frog by the porch. The place had no electricity, just kerosene, matches, and a spring-fed pump in the kitchen. That first night, I heard it. The low hum. Not wind. Not bugs, but a deep, rhythmic thrum like a tuning fork pressed into my bones. I chalked it up to nerves, isolation, fatigue. But the noise returned every night, always after dusk, always under the earth. And with it came the dreams. They started simply. A clearing with standing stones, a girl with a mouth sewn shut, a tree, growing upside down, roots in the sky, leaves in the dirt. Then more vivid, more painful. I'd wake with my tongue dry and sore, my fingertips raw, my hair damp with sweat and pine needles. I wrote it all down in this journal, every detail, and then I'd find pages I didn't remember writing. Pages in a language I don't speak. Spirals and glyphs, too precise to be scribbles. I stopped sleeping. Didn't help. The hollow waits for you to be tired enough to listen. On the fifth night, I found a trail behind the cabin. It wasn't marked, not even a game trail, just a stretch of trees where the moss grew sideways and the rocks looked smooth by hands, not weather. I followed it. Of course I did, because something in me, something not me, whispered, "It's already waiting for you." The trail curved like a spiral. I walked for hours, but the sun never moved. I should have been afraid. IWAS and single quotes T. Not yet. At the center of the spiral, there was a hollow, a perfect circle of dead grass, surrounded by tree stumps that bled sap the color of rust. In the center was a boulder, flat, mossy, carved with dozens of concentric circles, each filled with those same glyphs from my journal. And the hum was loud here, like a heartbeat underground. Then I saw her, the girl from my dreams, wearing clothes a century out of date, hair braided with bone charms. Her mouth stitched shut, eyes full of mercy and warning and grief. She held out a hand. I blinked. She was gone, and the hollow was dark, pitch dark. I ran back to the cabin, or I thought I did, because when I got there, the door was open and the fire was cold, and the calendar on the wall, the one I'd marked each day, had skipped forward for full days. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat there, listening to the hum, reading those strange journal pages over and over. And finally, I realized the truth. I wasn't writing the language. I was translating it from memory. It was a kind of prayer, an invocation, a lullaby for something ancient and enormous and buried beneath Bear Ridge. The locals don't talk about it because they know. Their ancestors fed it, kept it bound. But something broke Dot or someone opened it. I found records of a coal collapse from 1903, 37 men buried alive. Their bodies never recovered. But I found a photo of the site Dot, and in the background, carved into the rock wall, was the same spiral from the boulder. That wasn't a mine collapse. It was a seal, and someone woke it. I tried to leave, packed my gear, hiked out to the ridge crest, but the trail looped. Every path led back to the cabin, everyone. And every time I returned, the world felt less real. The bird songs too slow, the shadows too long, the trees whispering words that echoed in my skull like memories I didn't make. I started coughing up pine needles. My nails fell out and grew back black. I stopped recognizing my reflection. And the worst part, I wanted to go back to the hollow. I did 3 days ago, I think. I followed the spiral again. The girl was waiting this time. Her stitches gone. She sang without sound, just mouthed the words. And the earth opened. A crack straight down. Not a pit, a mouth. And I heard it speak. Not in sound, but in thought. An emotion that filled every cell of me with a hunger so vast. I understood, for the first time, what it meant to be small, to be food. It didn't want flesh. It wanted names. It wanted remembrance. And I gave it mine. I don't know who I am anymore, but I know what I was. I was the last keeper of the tongue, the final translator, the one who remembered the words, the shape of the door, the sound of the hum. Now the hollow has what it wants. It sleeps again, for now. But it left me behind. As its mouthpiece. So when hikers pass Bear Ridge and forget the name, when their maps glitch, or their trails loop, or their words come back wrong, that's me. That's us. The nameless, the dreamers who never came home. So if you ever find this journal on a cabin porch or hanging from a tree branch like an offering, don't read it. Don't say the words out loud. Don't follow the spiral trail, because the hollow's waking up again. And the more names it eats, the faster it remembers what it was. End of story 7. The Sleeping Hollow of Bear Ridge. Let's move to our 8 Saints story. I never saw her feet touch the ground. My name is Eliza Granger, and I have lived my whole life in a hollow near the West Virginia-Kentucky border, right where the fog seems thickest and the wind never forgets your name. This isn't a story about a haunted house or some cursed object. It's about something worse, something I still can't describe without shaking. A thing that walks in the woods, something that wears a girl's face, but has no reason to. People in these mountains talk about the woman with no shadow. They say she hums in a voice too low for your ears, but high enough to reach your bones. They say she can't be followed, only found. And once you find her, you don't leave the mountain, right? I didn't believe any of it until I was 17. That was the summer my sister Annalie disappeared. And the worst part, I was there. I saw her vanish, and I saw what took her place. We were hiking through Pine Hook Trail, one of those forgotten footpaths no one really maintains anymore. It was early July, and the canopy above us made the sunlight look green and drowsy. Annalie had just gotten back from college, and she was restless, eager to climb something wild and remember the place we came from. It was just the two of us. I remember the sound of our boots crunching twigs, the hum of insects in heat, and her laugh echoing like it didn't belong in the same world as the trees. She always walked ahead of me, proud and long-legged, her red flannel tied around her waist and her braids swinging like a bell rope. We stopped for lunch on a moss-covered rock. We didn't speak much. The forest had gone quiet, like it was holding its breath. That's when I saw the figure, a girl, standing maybe 30 feet off the trail, where the brush thickened, same height as Annalie, same clothes, same braid, only her feet weren't touching the ground. I blinked and it was gone. Annalie laughed, thinking I was spooked by a squirrel. I didn't tell her what I saw. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me already understood the truth that if you acknowledge something in these woods, it acknowledges you back. We moved on, but the trail was wrong. Somehow the sun had shifted behind us. The moss on the north sides of the trees was now on the south. We should have been heading uphill, but the path sloped downward, deeper into a basin I didn't remember from the map. The air grew heavy. The silence had a weight to it, a kind of slow echo you only hear underground or underwater. Then we came to the tree. It was massive, split open down the middle like it had been cleaved by lightning. Charred. Hollow. Inside it, someone had placed a mirror. Not a modern mirror. A tall, warped, Victorian thing framed in black wood, streaked with age. Annalie stepped toward it. And that's when she whispered something that didn't belong to her voice. I never saw her. Feet touched the ground. I remember the cold that spilled from the hollow tree like breath. I remember how the mirror shimmered, not with light, but with movement, like something behind the glass was waking up. Annalie reached toward it. Her fingers brushed the glass. And then she wasn't there. Just gone. No flash. No scream. Just an emptiness in the air where her breath had been. I screamed her name until I tasted blood. I ran in circles. I threw rocks at the mirror, but it only reflected the far stand, not even the right one. The trees in the glass were black. Wrong. Tilted toward each other like they were whispering secrets they didn't want me to hear. And then I saw her again. But it wasn't her. It was her face. Yes, her braid, her flannel, but not her eyes. And not her feet, because they hovered 6 inches off the dirt. Toes curled down like she'd forgotten how to stand. I ran. I didn't tell anyone the full truth. The sheriff called it an animal attack. My parents stopped asking questions, but I never stopped watching the woods. For a year, nothing happened. I didn't hike. I didn't leave the house alone. But on the anniversary of Annalie's disappearance, I started dreaming about her. In the dreams, she was standing just beyond the tree line, waving, always waving. And behind her, something moved. Something taller. A second shadow that didn't quite fit her body. It never spoke. It just hummed. A low, drowning sound, like breath in a throat too long. 2 years passed. I thought maybe grief had made me see what I wanted. Maybe it was a bear. Maybe the mirror was just some old hunter's trick. But then another girl vanished. Same trails, same season. Her name was Lainey, 14. I didn't know her well, but her mother called me, sobbing, saying she found my number written in her daughter's notebook, circled 3 times. I hadn't spoken to Lainey. Hadn't seen her since she was 8, but I remembered what Annalie said the moment before she vanished. That sentence. I never saw her feet touch the ground, and it hit me Lainey had probably seen her too. The girl, the thing. I drove to the trailhead the next morning. The sign was missing. The trail had no name anymore. Just a path. It wasn't the same as I remembered. The trees were closer. The leaves too dark. The ground was soft, almost like it was breathing beneath my boots. I walked 6 miles. Not a single bird. Not a single sound. Then I saw her. Lainey. Standing at the edge of the clearing. Just like Annalie. She turned toward me. And behind her was the mirror. No tree this time. Just the glass. Standing upright with no support. The reflection showed all 3 of us. Lainey, Annalie, And me, though only Lainey was physically there. Annalie's image stood behind the glass. Her face was cracked like porcelain. Her mouth was sewn shut, and her eyes moved only in the reflection. Lainey reached for it. I screamed. She turned, startled. But then her expression went slack. Her eyes rolled back, and she spoke, in the same voice Annalie had once used. I never saw her feet touch the ground. This time, I tackled her. I don't remember much after that. Only that I woke in the hospital with scratches down my arms, like vines had tried to drag me backward. The nurse said a hunter found me babbling by the trailhead, carrying an unconscious girl and muttering something about a mirror. Lainey was safe, for now, but she doesn't speak anymore, just hums. I started digging. There are stories, buried deep, about the hollow girls. Appalachian myths never written down, whispered about in dead dialects. Girls who wander too far from the trail. Girls who get seen, not taken seen. Because it's not a kidnapping. It's a replacement. A hollow version of them steps out, mimics them, but not perfectly. And it leaves behind a copy, a shell. One that walks in dreams and hums songs from a throat that remembers before language. They feed on memory, on recognition. They exist only when someone sees them as real. I moved away, changed my name, burned every photo of my sister. I forgot her on purpose, because the only weapon against the hollow girl is forgetting. They can't exist without their story. But last week, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a photograph of me and Annalie, taken 2 weeks ago, in front of the mirror, and her feet still not touching the ground. End of story 8. I never saw her feet touch the ground. Let's move to our 9th saint story. The screaming stones of Briar Ridge. They say if you listen long enough, the mountains talk back. Some believe it's the wind snaking through dead pine hollows. Others think it's just the isolation whispering. Madness. But in the town of Red Fern, tucked deep into the southern spine of Appalachia, we know better. There's a place west of Briar Ridge where the stones scream. I'm not being poetic. I mean that literally. The stones gray, jagged things. Worn half flat from wind and water, they let out a high, breathless shriek when you step near them. Only at night, only when the moon's above the tree line. They called it a trick of temperature. Geologists passed through, recording the vibrations, theorizing about quartz and pressure. But none of them stayed. Not one. My name is Casey Brent, and I've heard those stones scream every summer since I was 13. But it wasn't until I turned 29 that I learned what they were screaming for and what they were screaming about. Briar Ridge isn't marked on most maps. A few old coal trails wind around it, but the access roads have mostly collapsed, leaving only deer paths and old surveyor lines to guide the curious. My father was the park ranger assigned to Red Fern's boundaries until he passed in 2012. He used to joke that Briar Ridge was the heart of the mountain, beating slow and mean. You can hike all you want, Casey, he'd say, but stay out of the ridge after dusk. The rocks there remember things. When I was a kid, I thought he meant ghosts. Now I'm not so sure he didn't. It started again 2 months ago. My cousin Jake called me from the trail, breathless, half sobbing. Said his dog had gone missing near the ridge, and that the rocks were making noise again, screaming. He'd been camping out for 2 nights and hadn't slept. Said there were shadows between the trees that didn't move like people. That the stones weren't just screaming, they were repeating something. Mimicking. I didn't believe him until I played the voicemail back that night. There was a shriek, yes, but underneath it, barely audible, was a whisper that sounded like it came from underwater. And it said my name. I hiked in the next morning, alone. It was stupid, reckless even, but Jake was my cousin, my last real family. I'd already lost my dad to this mountain. I wasn't going to lose Jake too. I took the east slope up toward the ridge, passing abandoned fire towers and rusted weather. Equipment long forgotten. The air got heavier the closer I came. Thicker, like breathing through a wool blanket. Then I found the campsite. Jake's tent was slashed open from the inside. His backpack was still there, contents scattered, food untouched, water full. But no dog Dot and no Jake Dot, just the rocks. They sat in a half circle just west of the site, nestled in a clearing that looked too perfectly shaped to be natural. Each stone was nearly identical, waist-high, gray, with sharp-edged ridges running up their sides like ribs. They didn't scream then, not during the day, but I felt the weight of them, the wrongness, like standing in a church where something holy had died. I looked around for any sign of Jake tracks, prints, broken branches. Nothing. It was like he'd just stepped out of his skin and vanished. Then I saw the symbol, etched into the flat face of the center stone. A spiral inside a square inside another spiral. My father had drawn that same shape in one of his notebooks the year before he died. The note beside it read, "Don't listen when the stones start speaking back." I should have left then. I didn't. I camped there that night, brought firewood, kept a blaze going, just to see, just to prove to myself the mountain was still just a mountain. The first scream came at 2:14 a.m. It was short, piercing, like metal being scraped across ice. Then came the whispers. They rose from the rocks like steam. No mouths, no movement, but sound unmistakable. "Casey, Casey, you left him." I stood frozen. Back to the fire, watching the stones. They began to glow. Not bright. A faint, sickly green, like phosphorescent mold. And I saw the shadows. Figures, tall and bent, crawling out from behind each stone. They didn't walk like people. They twitched, jerked forward like they were being yanked by invisible strings. Some had arms too long. Others had heads that lolled like they were half broken. And every one of them whispered, but not in unison, not words. It was like they were practicing speech, repeating sounds they didn't understand, tasting names like they were chewing on teeth. Kotsi, Ja, Ok, Funther. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I remember their eyes most of all empty, wide, wet, like they didn't know they had eyes, like they didn't know how to see, but were trying real hard. Then one reached for me, and I ran. I didn't stop until I hit the river bend 3 miles east, collapsed, slept in the open under moonlight. When I got back to town, I went straight to my father's old storage locker. It had been untouched since his death. I knew the combination by heart. Inside were maps. Hundreds of them. All of Briar Ridge, all hand-drawn. Every one of them had that same spiral square spiral symbol marked over the stones. And notes beside them. 1978, 2 boys lost, found with mouths filled with gravel. 1989, screams recorded, but tape erased itself overnight. 2002, female hiker missing, last seen carving spiral into tree bark. 2010, Jake dreams in a language he doesn't know. Jake. My cousin. My dad had known something was wrong with him years ago. There were old tapes too. Cassette recordings, dozens. I found an old player, popped one in. The voice was my dad's. The ridge is older than red fern, older than coal, older than the names we gave the sky. The stones were once graves, but they don't hold the dead. They invite them. They mimic. They call back. They want a body, a name, and a witness. Another tape. Jake's been talking in his sleep. Keeps drawing the spiral. He doesn't remember. I'm taking him off the mountain. I think they tried to copy him, but he was too young. It's not finished. but it's learning another. I buried one of them in an old mine shaft. It was wearing my face. I nearly dropped the tape player. Whatever those things were, they weren't ghosts. They weren't spirits. They were echoes. Reflections of people they'd almost become. Almost swallowed. I knew then that Jake hadn't vanished. He'd been taken again, finished, completed. And something else had stepped into his skin. I had to go back. This time I came armed. A flare gun, salt, fire starters, my dad's journal. I had left word with a friend, a geologist who'd always humored my stories. If I didn't return in 24 hours, she'd send help. I reached the clearing before dusk. The stones were waiting. They didn't glow this time. They didn't need to. Jake was standing in the center, but it wasn't Jake. He smiled too wide. His head tilted just a bit too far. And when he spoke, it was in my father's voice. "You're late, Casey." I didn't answer. I raised the flare gun. He didn't flinch. The other shadows began to emerge. Dozens of them, crawling from the tree line, whispering names. Names of people from Red Fern. Names I hadn't heard in years. Names of the dead. Jake took a step forward. "They don't want to hurt you. They want to be you. Isn't that better?" He stretched his arms wide, and for a moment I saw the truth. The skin didn't fit right. His joints were mismatched, like bones forced into the wrong shape. I fired. The flare struck his chest and burst. He screamed, not like a man, but like the stones. The others shrieked in unison, dropping to their knees. I ran forward and dumped salt around the center stone. Fire flared in the lines of the spiral. I began to speak the phrase from my father's notes. "You were never born, and I never named you. You are shadow without light, echo without sound. Return to stone." The clearing shook. One by one, the shadows collapsed. The stones cracked. Jake's body turned to dust, and the whispering stopped. That was 6 weeks ago. The stones are gone, replaced by empty hollows, like teeth pulled from a jaw. Red Fern's quieter now. The mountain's colder. But sometimes, on nights when the moon is high and the wind holds its breath, I hear something faint behind the hills. A voice practicing how to say my name, learning how to fit into my shape, and waiting for me to forget what I saw. Just once. So it can become me. Forever. End of story 9. The Screaming Stones of Briar Ridge. Let's move to our 10 Saint story. The devil walks on 6 legs. They warned me not to follow the blood trails in the woods behind Darren's Hollow. That's what they call the place, an old, collapsed settlement deep in the Appalachian wilds. You won't find it on a map. You'll only hear about it if someone decides you've already seen too much and can't be trusted to leave it alone. But I had already seen too much. It began when my sister Ava disappeared on a solo backpacking trip last October. We're from Asheville. She was careful, smarter than me, honestly. A cartographer. She'd hiked alone before, plenty of times. Left trail notes, backup GPS, emergency pings. All standard. But that week, she didn't check. And when the rangers finally found her tent on day 6, her gear was inside. Her boots, her journal, her water bottle all sitting neatly where they should be. Only she was gone, and the ground outside was soaked in blood. I wasn't supposed to get involved. Not officially. The state declared it a missing persons case and moved on. But I know my sister. She wouldn't just vanish, especially not without her boots on. So I started digging. Her last coordinates placed her along the East Elk Pass Trail, about 30 miles north of Briar Fork. Wild country, no cell service, barely maintained. But there were rumors. I found blog posts, fringe stuff talking about mutilated deer, strange holes in the ground that breathes warm air, Stories of a thing crawling between the trees. Fast and silent. Locals called it the Devil of Darren's Hollow. They said it walked on 6 legs, had no eyes, and sounded like 2 people talking at once. They said it only took the smart ones, the wanderers, the people who paid attention. And they said it left a trail of blood not from its victims, but from itself, as if it were always bleeding, always searching, always hungry. I hiked out to her last known location on a Friday morning, packed light. I didn't tell anyone. Just brought Ava's map, my knife, a satellite phone, and her old field notebook. That notebook had been with her since college. Inside were contour sketches, lists of tree species, cave notations, and on the last page, 3 red ink circles drawn along the trail. Ava never used red ink. The first 2 were scratched out, hard like she'd tried to erase them with the force of her pen. The third was untouched. It was marked Darren's Hollow. I hadn't even heard of it before. It wasn't listed anywhere. But something about the shape of her circles, it looked less like a location and more like a warning or a trap. The fars felt different the closer I got. The wind stopped. Not died down, stopped. The trees stood. Too straight, too still. There were no birds, no insects. Just the crunch of my boots and my own breath. Then I saw it. Blood on the ground. A line of it. Thick, rust-red, like someone had dragged a fresh wound across the dirt. And it didn't dry, even after an hour. It still glistened. I followed it. I know how this sounds. Believe me. But there are things in those woods that don't want to be understood. Things that feed on being seen. The kind of things that aren't bound by bone or skin. The trail led me down a ravine to a cave mouth covered in roots. Inside, it stank wet earth, rot, and something chemical. I stepped inside. That was my first mistake. It was pitch black. I used my flashlight, but it only reached a few feet before being swallowed. The walls were narrow, damp, alive with movement I couldn't see. Then I heard the clicking, like claws tapping stone. Fast, too fast. I turned and ran, but the mouth of the cave was gone. It had closed behind me. I don't remember falling. Just that one moment I was spinning in the dark, and the next I was in an open chamber, lit by a dim, sourceless glow. Around me were bones. Hundreds of them. Animal, human. Some cracked open like eggs. And in the center was a mirror, not a glass one, a pool of water so still and black it looked solid. I approached it slowly, heartbeat pounding in my ears. When I looked in, I saw Ava. She was staring back at me. But her eyes were wrong. Too wide, unblinking. Her face twitched in slow, jerky movements, like someone puppeting her from behind her skin. She opened her mouth and spoke. In my voice, it remembers us. I stepped back, and the thing in the mirror crawled out. It didn't burst or slither or leap. It folded out like bones rearranging. Limbs where there shouldn't be limbs. Joints that bent backwards. 6 legs, long and spindly, supporting a body that was almost human. Its face looked like mine, except hollow. Like it was sculpted from memory, not flesh. It stood silently, then cocked its head and let out a sound that didn't come from a throat. It came from everywhere, a stereo whisper. We found her first. She drew too well. She mapped the silence. Now we are her. And I ran. I don't know how I escaped that cave. I just remember light, blinding daylight smashing into my eyes, and the feel of dirt under my nails as I clawed my way out of the earth. I was 2 miles from the cave entrance. My compass didn't work. My GPS kept blinking the number 666 on repeat, and the blood trail was behind me, still fresh, still wet. I made it back to town. I told the local ranger Tompkins, an old friend of my dad's, and he went pale. Told me this wasn't the first time. Said there were others: cartographers, cave divers, trailblazers. People who mapped too much, who noticed things that weren't meant to be noticed. And every time, one of them vanished and came back wrong. I looked up missing persons over the last 20 years around Darren's Hollow. 30-7. All smart, all solitary, all vanishing in the same zone. But here's what chilled me most. Of the 37, 12 were reportedly found alive, wandering, confused. But their families refused to take them back. Said they weren't right. Said they were too quiet. That they mimicked voices they never heard. That they remembered things that never happened. And every one of those returned victims eventually walked back into the woods one night and were never seen again. As if they were going home. I tried to burn Ava's notebook. It didn't catch. The pages felt damp, even after a day in the sun. Like they were still underground, still soaking in that black water. So I buried it instead. But every night since, I've been dreaming in maps. Seeing symbols I can't understand. Drawing spirals in my sleep. And every morning I wake up with dirt under my nails and blood on my shoes. Last night, I heard something outside my cabin. A scratching. 6 legs tapping on wood. Then a whisper. My own voice, speaking from the trees. Let me in. There are things in the mountains that wear your face and learn your voice. They bleed forever and hide in holes that shouldn't exist. They walk on 6 legs and speak in echoes. They took Ava. Now they're learning to be me. And soon they'll be better at it. I can feel myself fading, losing time, forgetting how it felt to be warm. I check the mirror sometimes, and my reflection doesn't blink when I do. So I'm recording this. In case you find it. In case you see someone who looks like me out there in the trees. Don't listen. Don't speak. And whatever you do, don't follow the blood. End of story 10. The devil walks on 6 legs. Let's move to our 11th saint story. The Hollow Men of Hemlock Ridge. It was a warm July morning when Park Ranger Eliza Morin disappeared from her post along Hemlock Ridge in the Appalachian backcountry. The station, located 15 miles off any paved road, served as a fire lookout, wildlife survey base, and occasional ranger outpost. When the other rangers hiked in a week later for a scheduled resupply drop, they found her cabin locked from the inside, untouched food in the cupboard, and her boots placed neatly by the door. The only thing missing was her radio and Eliza herself. What disturbed them most, though, wasn't her absence. It was the smell. A faint, coppery odor that seemed to hang in the air like steam. One of the rangers, a veteran named Wyatt, described it as the scent of meat left in the sun too long, but there were no animals around. Not even birds. I learned about Hemlock Ridge 3 years later, in a faded report buried in the Forest Service's digital archives. I wasn't supposed to have access, but I was a contractor brought in to evaluate the Ridge Trail for potential development trail upgrades, signage, erosion mitigation. I'd worked other parks before, the usual grind, but nothing about Hemlock Ridge felt usual. The locals never talked about it. Rangers rotated out faster than anywhere else I'd been, and buried in every folder, on every printout, there were little handwritten notes in the margins, things like no patrols after dark, or leave markers. They move, and chillingly, if you hear them whisper, don't answer. I didn't know what that meant until it was too late. My name is Thomas Reed. I spent the summer of 2020 hiking and surveying Hemlock Ridge. This is my account of what happened. You won't find it in any formal report or departmental record. But I need someone to know. In case I go like the rest of them. In case I become hollow to. It started with the shadows. You'd be walking along a switchback in the late afternoon, golden sunlight pouring through the trees, and for just a second, you'd see your shadow stretching the wrong way. Not long, Not weird, just wrong. It would split slightly, like someone standing next to you but unseen. Then it would snap back every time. I told myself it was the light playing tricks. Ridge paths are uneven. Trees bend light. I explained it away. Until the third day, when I found the cairn dot, it wasn't on my map, but it was tall 7 feet at least, made entirely of smooth, river-rounded stones stacked impossibly high without mortar or support. Sitting beside it was a torn ranger patch, partially buried beneath moss. I snapped a photo and moved on. That night, the whispering began. At first, I thought it was wind. Hemlock Ridge is dense with evergreens, and high-altitude breezes make eerie sounds. But this was different. It came in pulses. Soft, syncopated, as if someone were whispering just outside the canvas of my tent. I couldn't make out words, just the shape of words, like breathing wrapped around syllables. I lay frozen, hand wrapped around my knife. Then I heard a second voice, whispering in perfect unison with the first. They weren't having a conversation. They were mimicking each other. I stayed up all night. At dawn, there was nothing. No footprints. No signs of intrusion. Just silence. And a new cairn 10 feet from my tent. Shorter this time, but unmistakably fresh. I should have left then, but I kept going. I told myself it was locals messing with me, or another ranger pulling a sick joke. Maybe even sleep deprivation. I'd done long stints in remote areas before. Isolation does things to the brain. But deep down, I knew something was off. Each day, I found more cairns. Always at night, they appeared different heights. Some balanced on a single point. Others ranged like twisted human forms, like effigies. The way you'd build a person if you'd never seen one, just heard them described. The whispering returned, louder, closer. I'd wake with sweat pouring down my back, and the unmistakable feeling that something had just moved outside the tent. By day 10, I stopped sleeping. That's when I found Eliz's radio. It was buried beneath a cairn no taller than my knee. A glint of silver caught my eye as I passed. When I pulled the rocks away, I uncovered a broken UHF Ranger band radio still bearing her name scratched into the side. But it wasn't dead. When I turned the knob, static burst through. Then a voice. They're not people. Then nothing. But snow. I ran diagnostics. No signal. No power. The battery had corroded. But I heard her voice, clear as day. That night, I set up motion cameras around the site. For angles, I are enabled. High quality. I pointed one at the largest cairn that had appeared, a 10-foot monster shaped like a skeletal tree. I stayed awake in the tent, eyes on the red lights. At 2:41 a.m., one of them clicked. Then another. Then all four went dead. The air pressure changed. My ears popped. Then the whispering started again. This time, it was coming from inside the tent. I whipped around, knife drawn, but no one was there. Only the shape of someone had been. I could feel it. The nylon sides of the tent still fluttered, as if displaced by movement. Then I heard something I can't explain. My voice. Speaking. From behind me, they were the wind, Tom. They wear it like skin. I turned and slashed. Nothing. Just air. Just silence. I abandoned camp at first light, packed everything, and started hiking back. But the trail didn't lead where it should have. GPS froze. Compass spun. The landmarks I'd memorized were gone. Trees weren't in the right place. Ridges curved the wrong way. It was like the mountain had rearranged itself. Or like I was walking in something that remembered what the trail looked like, but got it wrong. At noon, I emerged into a clearing that shouldn't exist. And found the town. Not a real town. Just remnants, old cabins, collapsed barns, stone chimneys reaching into the sky like fingers, a rusted bell with the word Gilead carved into it. I'd never seen it on any map. It looked Civil War era at best. And in the center, a statue of a man, or something trying to be a man. Built from cairns, sticks, and bones. Hands to long, head to round, knees backward. At the base of the statue was a plaque, still legible through moss. They who hollow themselves shall never die. They walk the ridge forever. Then I heard the chanting. It came from all around. A low, breathy chorus, not music, not language. Just syllables, hummed and gurgled and spat from unseen mouths. I backed away slowly, but every direction looked the same. Then I saw the eyes, not real ones. Holes, carved into trees, into stones, into faces of what once were men. Dozens of shapes stepped forward from behind trees, tall, emaciated, wrapped in bark and sinew and strands of old ranger uniforms. Their heads were smooth and pale, mouths gaping wide like screaming. Masks. And inside each mouth was nothing, just black. No tongue, no throat, no light, just a void. I turned and ran. Branches tore at me. I fell, rose, ran again. Hours passed. The sun moved wrong in the sky. When I finally collapsed, breath ragged, I was back on the trail. Hemlock Ridge. But it had changed. Every tree had a cairn built at its base. Hundreds, maybe thousands, and they were all facing me. I didn't stop to check my bearings. I just moved downhill, anywhere, away. 2 days later, I stumbled into Briar Fork Ranger Station. Half-starved, delirious. They kept me in quarantine for 5 days. Psychological evaluation, blood tests, the works. They said I'd eaten poisonous berries, that I hallucinated. But when I asked if they'd ever heard of Gilead or Eliza Morin or the Hollow Men, they froze. Wouldn't answer. Just said, "You're lucky to be alive." That was 6 months ago. Since then, 5 hikers have gone missing along Hemlock Ridge. All experienced, all solo. One left a voicemail to her brother the night before she vanished. He played it for me. In it, she whispers, "They move like wind and wear old skin. Don't answer when they call. They'll take your breath and fill you with echoes." I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream of cairns, and sometimes I wake up with rocks in my bed. If you're planning to hike Hemlock Ridge, bring no camera. Speak to no one. Do not respond to voices that sound like yours. And if you see a town in the woods that doesn't belong on any map, turn around. You've been seen, and they're already learning how to wear you. End of story 11. The Hollow Men of Hemlock Ridge. Let's move to our 12th saint story. Whistle Between the Pines. When I was a teenager, I went hiking with my Uncle Jonah every summer. He lived in a log cabin tucked away in a hidden patch of the Appalachian wilderness near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. The area wasn't marked on any regular map. He called it Black Hollow, claimed it had been left alone for good reason and touched since before his granddaddy's time. The locals whispered about it, but didn't go near Jonah, though. Said it was peaceful, free from the noise and filth of modern life. He'd carved a life out there with a generator, solar panels, well water, and a satellite radio he only turned on when weather got rough. I was 15 the last time I visited him, and I remember this. He made me promise never to whistle in the woods. If you hear one, don't answer it. He said one night while we were sitting on the porch, fireflies drifting through the trees. Don't echo it, don't mock it. Just go inside. Shut the door, they like voices. They don't forget M. I thought he was trying to scare me. He had a dry, gruff sense of humor. The kind of man who used silence like a weapon. But there was something in the way he said it, slow and tired. like a man who'd seen too much and knew he couldn't explain any of it. The next morning, I asked him again about the whizzing. His reply was simple. There's things older than us in these woods. Things that wear our sounds. I didn't whistle that summer. Not once. But I heard it 3 times. Always around dusk. Always the same tune for soft, ascending notes. The first time, I thought it was an echo of birdsong. The second, I thought, maybe Jonah was pulling my leg. The third time, I heard it while walking alone to the creek. And I swear to you it came from behind me, even though I hadn't made a sound. That third time, I ran straight back to the cabin. I never told him. We left the next morning. That was 16 years ago. I didn't go back to Black Hollow, not until Jonah went missing. I got the call from the county sheriff in early October. A hunter reported smoke coming from the woods, and when they reached the clearing, they found Jonah's cabin burned to the ground. No body, just ash, scorched earth, and a trail of boot prints that walked 30 feet into the woods and stopped. Just stopped. The sheriff said it was likely a bear, that he got disoriented, wandered off, died from exposure. But I knew better. Jonah wouldn't leave that cabin, not unless something forced him out. I took time off work, told my wife I needed closure, packed my gear, maps, and his old letters he used to write me every Christmas. Last one he sent was in July. No explanation. Just a single sentence scribbled in trembling handwriting. I think it learned my voice. I hiked out to days after the first frost. The trees were dying, leaves orange and rust red, like fires smeared across the ridges. I followed old footpaths, deer trails, and faded markers until I reached the blackened clearing. The cabin was truly gone. Not even a chimney left. But something waited for me in the center of the ashes. Surrounded by scorched pine needles was a perfect circle of untouched earth. Not burned, not disturbed, just clean, and in the center of that circle, a recorder, old handheld. The kind Jonah used when he was alone and didn't feel like writing. I pressed play. Static at first. Then a soft whistle for notes, ascending. Slow, then Jonah's voice. Hoarse and shaking. It's watching from the ridge. It mimics deer, dogs, elk. But the whizzing is always the same. Don't call back. Don't follow it. Don't let it learn your rhythm. The rest was just breathing. Long, uneven. Then a click. That night, I set up camp near the creek, away from the clearing. I couldn't sleep. The woods were too quiet. Even at that time of year, there should have been owls, rustling, maybe a fox, but it was still, like the air was waiting for something. Then I heard it from deep in the pines, whistle, for notes, clear. I gritted my teeth, stayed in the tent, didn't move. Then came the voice, my voice. Jonah, you there? Choked and halting. But undeniably mine. It was repeating a phrase I'd used earlier that day. When I called out into the clearing. Then it whistled again. The next morning, I found new prints in the mud near my camp. Not boots, not animal. Bare feet, long toes, wide pads. And only left feet. Every print was a left foot. I broke camp. Hiked northeast, aiming for Old Crow Bluff. Where Jonah used to take me. He said there was a trail up there that led to an overlook, untouched by man for 100 years. But when I got there, the bluff was wrong. It had changed. The trees were too thick. The rocks were shaped differently. The land felt rearranged. And then I saw them, shapes, standing just behind the tree line. Tall, slender, slightly hunched. Not moving. Watching. When I blinked, they were gone. That night, I found an old tree with carvings, initials, years, symbols. One of them was mine, carved when I was a kid. Next to it, fresh cuts. Hello, Jonah. Where is your nephew? I'm getting better. Beneath that, a set of marks, repeating slashes, like tally. Marks. Hundreds of them. All fresh. I left the tree behind. The whispering came next. Not in words, but rhythms, the exact cadence of human speech. Laughs, grunts, coughs, played back wrong, too fast, or in reverse, like someone had only ever heard these sounds and was trying to replicate them. Then the whistling returned. I snapped, screamed into the woods. Leave me alone. The whispering stopped. Then, in perfect mimicry of my voice, the woods whispered back. Okay, I didn't sleep that night, just kept walking. Flashlight dead. Batteries frozen. Round 3 a.m., I found a cave. Shallow, but dry. Crawled inside and waited for dawn. That's when I heard him. Jonah. Calling my name. Whimpering. Begging. Tommy, please, come get me. I closed my eyes. Plugged my ears. But the sound didn't stop. It got closer. And closer. Until it was breathing into the cave with me. I screamed and threw my canteen at the entrance. The sound vanished. When I finally emerged at first light, I found tracks again. Only left feet. This time, they circled the cave 12 times. The next day, I found the pit. It wasn't marked on any map. Just a sudden depression in the land, ringed by ancient stones and dead pines. In the center, bones. Hundreds of them. Some animal, some human. And at the bottom, a backpack. Jonah single quotes S. Inside his journal. The final entry read, "It's learned my voice. It talks to me now. It even dreams my memories. I see my own life in the trees. I see myself watching me from outside. I think it's becoming me. If you're reading this, nephew, it's too late. Run." I did. I ran until I collapsed. When I woke, I was in a hospital bed in Knoxville. 2 hikers had found me on the edge of the highway, half-starved, mud-caked, raving about voices and whistles. They told me I'd been missing for 21 days, but I only remember 10. They found nothing in the woods. No cabin, no bones, no pit. Just my footprints and a second set only left feet. That was 2 years ago. Sometimes I still hear the whistle. In my dreams. In static. In the wind through the trees behind my house. For notes. Always the same. Sometimes I hear it in the baby monitor. Sometimes in the shower. And once, on a voicemail I never left. They say mimicry is the first step of language. But what if it's more? What if they're not trying to communicate? What if they're trying to replace? So if you're ever deep in the pines and you hear a whistle, don't answer it. Don't hum it. Don't echo it. And whatever you do, never speak your name out loud, because something is listening. Something is learning. And it wants to sound just like you. End of story 12. Whistle between the pines. Let's move to our 13th saint story. The Gloam Trail. You ever walk a trail that just feels wrong? Not dangerous like loose rocks or steep drops. Not even haunted. Exactly. Just off. In a way your brain can't place. Like you stepped into someone else's dreamland they haven't woken up yet. I did. Once. Nearly 10 years ago. I hiked into a part of the Appalachians I now know locals call the Gloam Trail. You won't find it marked on any park maps or GPS. And if you ask the folks in Granger's Hollow, they'll tell you, ain't no trail out that way no more. Been closed for decades. Some will say it washed out in a flood. Others just go quiet and change the subject. But it's still there. And sometimes it finds you. I was 24 then. Freelance photographer. I spent that fall doing a photo series on forgotten trails and ghost towns in eastern Kentucky. I'd driven into Granger's Hollow the day before, small town with one motel, one diner, and a general store run by a man who looked like he hadn't slept since the 80s. He warned me not to hike alone, said weather was turning. I said I'd be fine. I wasn't looking for trouble, just a few moody shots of forest decay and rusted cabins. But that morning, the woods swallowed me. Not suddenly but slowly, deceptively. The trail I'd mapped looped into a hollow and up a ridge, then back toward a stream where I planned to camp for the night. At some point between the ridge and the creek, the terrain shifted. I swore the slope turned the opposite direction, like gravity forgot which way it worked. The trees grew closer together, the underbrush stopped moving. No wind, no birds, just me and the sound of my boots, too loud in the stillness. Then I noticed something even stranger. I hadn't seen a single fallen leaf, not one. Despite being deep into October, every tree stood full, vibrant, untouched by decay. It was like they were faking autumn, holding their color just long enough to fool me. That's when I found the second trail. It wasn't marked. Didn't show up on my topographic map or satellite overlay. But it was there, narrow and unnaturally straight, cutting through a wall of pines with alarming precision. Something about it made my skin crawl. Not in fear exactly, more like a bodily warning, some genetic memory in my bones telling me, do not follow this. But I was arrogant. I was young, and I was looking for something rare, something eerie and beautiful. So I stepped onto the gloam trail. Almost instantly, the air changed. It felt denser, but not humid thick, like trying to breathe through layers of gauze. The light dimmed, even though it was only midday. The trees looked different too. Taller, impossibly straight, their bark almost black. I'd never seen trees like that in Appalachia. And the silence, it wasn't natural. It didn't feel like silence. It felt like I'd been buried in cotton. I couldn't even hear the crunch of twigs beneath my boots anymore. My breath made no sound. My camera's shutter click was swallowed. I walked for maybe half an hour before the first echo reached me. Except it wasn't mine. It was footsteps crunching behind me. I froze. Turned. No one there. I called out. Nothing. But the moment I started walking again, I heard it. One step, then another, matching me, lagging behind. I stopped. It stopped. I turned again. Empty trail. I tried to shrug it off, figured it was some animal, my own paranoia. But the deeper I walked, the worse it got. The light never changed. It should have been heading toward dusk, but the sky above, what little I could see through the canopy, remained a constant, featureless gray. Then I noticed the trees weren't just tall. They were getting closer together. Each step narrowed the corridor. Branches began to cross above me, intertwining. I had to duck, then crouch. Eventually, I had to crawl. And that's when I realized I hadn't turned around. I'd kept going forward, not even thinking about it. Like something was guiding me, hurting me. When I finally stopped, I turned back. And there was no path behind me. Just trees. Impossibly dense. I should have panicked, should have screamed or run, but I didn't. I just kept moving. The world changed after that. I emerged into a clearing that felt wrong. It was shaped like a perfect circle, maybe 40 feet wide, completely enclosed by pine walls. In the center was a stone arch, ancient, crumbling, moss-choked. It looked Roman, almost. But that made no sense out here. At the base of the arch was a mirror, just sitting there, full length, wood frame, intact. I approached slowly. The mirror was dusty, old but not broken, and when I looked into it, I saw myself, but not exactly. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. Then it waved. I did not. And then it whispered. A voice inside the glass without moving its lips. You're already here. I turned and ran. The trail didn't fight me this time. It let me go. I don't remember how I got back to the regular trail. It felt like hours, maybe more. But when I reached my tent, it was still standing. My fire pit untouched. But my camera was gone. I packed everything and hiked out. Didn't stop until I reached my car. Drove until I hit cell service. Told myself it was exhaustion, hallucination. That maybe I wandered into some weird, hidden park. That the trail was real, just not recorded. That I saw a ruin, not a ghost. I convinced myself for a while, until the photos came back. 2 weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside were 5 printed photos, all from my missing camera. Each one showed me standing in the Glome Trail, but wrong in one. I was crawling under a tree. Even though I never took a photo at that angle in another, I was asleep beside the mirror. In the final photo, I was standing in front of the arch smiling mouth to wide, eyes to black. That's when the calls started late at night. Always from blocked numbers silence for 10, 20 seconds. Then a voice my own whispering, "You're almost back." It's been 9 years. The mirror comes back sometimes in dreams, in reflections that aren't mine. Twice, I've caught glimpses of myself smiling in places I wasn't smiling. Last winter, my girlfriend said she woke up to see me standing at the edge of the bed, but I was still asleep. She said I was whispering to her. The trail never ends. I tried going back to Granger's Hollow, but it's not there anymore. Not on any map, not on GPS. The road is overgrown, blocked by a rusted gate that simply says trail closed, but sometimes, when the fog rolls in just right, you can still hear footsteps behind you, matching yours. And if you turn too slow, you might catch your reflection out of sync. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear your own voice say, "Welcome back." End of story 13. The Glome Trail. Let's move to our 14th saint story, the man with bark for skin. When people talk about the Appalachian woods, they always bring up ghosts, wendigos, skinwalkers. Whatever mythology gets the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up. But there's something different about what happened to me. What I saw, what I lived through, it wasn't part of folklore. It wasn't something whispered about round campfires. It didn't need legend. Because whatever it was, it didn't hide. It watched. It waited. And then it walked out of the trees. And its skin was made of bark. I used to be a volunteer trail ranger in a remote stretch of West Virginia forest, near the border of Pocahontas and Randolph counties. That place has over 100,000 acres of dense, near primal woods, most of it barely touched by hikers. It's a wonderland for people who like solitude and danger. In 2017, I signed up for a solo patrol assignment. 4 nights, 5 days, checking remote campsites and trails, logging fallen trees, and replacing faded trail blazes. I was experienced. I'd done 2 tours in Afghanistan and another stint with the Forest Service in Colorado. But something about this place hit me differently from the first day. It began at a place called McCready's Hollow. There's nothing on any official map. It shows up in a few handwritten logs from the 1970s, mostly referencing a long-abandoned settlement, and something called the Coppice Path. That path hadn't been maintained in over 40 years, but I found the entrance half covered in brambles and marked by a warped wooden sign, where only the letters CPH remained. I wasn't supposed to go down it, but something made me the moment I stepped onto the trail. The woods fell silent. I know what you're thinking, it's always the silence. It's cliché, right? But this wasn't normal. It wasn't just birds and insects going quiet. It was like I walked into an enclosed room, soundproofed by the trees themselves. The wind didn't blow. The branches didn't sway. And yet I kept walking. About a mile in, I noticed the trees looked different. Taller, narrower, all hardwoods, but with something unnatural about their arrangement, too evenly spaced, too symmetrical. It felt like walking between cathedral columns. That's when I smelled it. Rotting wood. Not the usual forest musk, but deep, wet, diseased rot. And under that, something worse, copper and meat. Then I heard the breathing. It came from ahead, deep, wet, strained, like someone trying to breathe through a punctured lung. I froze, pulled out my hatchet, took a few cautious steps forward. The trail bent left. Beyond the bend, I saw movement. Something shifted between the trees, slow, deliberate, like a person, but not. Its arms were too long. Its skin was dark brown, rough, cracked like dried bark. Its face was a network of knots and ridges, and where its eyes should have been were hollow sockets filled with damp moss. I didn't run. Not yet. Because it hadn't noticed me. But then it turned its head. No eyes. But somehow, it saw me. Its body creaked like old timber, and it exhaled a breath that rattled the leaves. Then it took a step toward me. And then another. I ran. I didn't scream. I didn't even look back. The trail behind me seemed to close in, every root and branch grabbing at my ankles. I sprinted until my lungs felt like they'd rip open. I didn't stop until I reached my assigned campsite, Camp Echo 3, where my tent was still set up and my supplies untouched. But the woods didn't feel any safer. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up with my flashlight and hatchet clutched in shaking hands. And at 2:17 a.m., I heard it again. The breathing. Just outside the tent. Slow. Wet, labored. Then a dragging noise, like tree roots being pulled through soil. I stayed, frozen until sunrise. When I finally stepped outside, I saw it. Footprints. Not boot prints, not animal tracks. Bare feet, elongated, cracked, with deep splits like dry bark. Each print pressed into the mud as if it weighed hundreds of pounds. And they led straight to my tent, then turned away. The next day, I hiked out to the ranger station, nearly 20 miles in rough terrain, but I made it in less than 6 hours. I didn't tell them everything, just said I saw an unregistered hiker near the coppice path and didn't feel safe. They brushed it off, said nobody had been in that part of the forest in decades. One older ranger, Daniels, pulled me aside afterward. "You saw him, didn't you?" he asked. I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. "Man with bark for skin," he whispered. "We don't say his name. Not anymore." "What is he?" Daniels looked me dead in the eye. "A man who gave up flesh for roots." That night, I couldn't sleep back at the station's cabin. I kept checking the windows. I knew I shouldn't have brought anything back with me, but part of me felt marked. Like I'd left something in those woods or taken something I didn't realize. Around 3 a.m., I heard a tapping. At the window. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. I crept over and pulled back the curtain. Nothing. But in the dirt below the window. More footprints. And on the glass. Fingerprints. 5 long, bark-textured smudges. I left the station that morning. Never went back. A month later, I woke up with splinters at my feet, dozens of them, thin, black, embedded deep under the skin like something had grown there. Doctors couldn't explain it, called it a foreign body reaction. But when they pulled them out, they weren't wood. They were root fragments, still damp, still alive. They twitched. On the tray, they tried to biopsy my foot tissue. The sample grew bark. That was when I stopped going to hospitals. I moved to Ohio, tried to forget it all. Now more woods. No more trails. But the forest didn't forget me. It crept in through other ways. I started hearing things at night. Breathing. Creaking. Sometimes I'd wake up to find leaves in my bed. Damp, fresh, smelling of rot. Once, I opened the fridge and found dirt. Just dirt packed tight, as if something had burrowed there. And then there were the dreams. Always the same. I'm back on the coppice path. The trees lean in, watching, and he's there. Standing in the trail, motionless, breathing. His voice is low, wooden, like wind through rotted branches. You left your skin behind. Last year, I saw Daniels again. Found his obituary online. Heart attack in his truck, parked in a lot just outside Granger. But the weird part wasn't how he died. It was what the mortician wrote in the report. Body exhibited unusual rigidity and subdermal hardening consistent with lignin. Lignin, the stuff that makes trees stiff. They cremated him before anyone could ask more questions. It's been 7 years now. The changes are harder to hide. My skin is thick in places, dry, cracked, bark-like. My fingers have begun to split, revealing something underneath, not bone, but wood grain. I don't bleed red anymore. I bleed sap. Sweet, golden, warm. It drips when I sleep. I've stopped shaving. My hair doesn't grow anymore, but moss has started along my scalp, and I don't sleep at night. I listen. To the breathing. I know what's coming. The forest doesn't take without giving. It's been growing me, replacing me, the man with bark. For skin, he wasn't born that way. He was like me. Once, a ranger, a hiker, a man who stepped too far into the woods and never came all the way back. And now, I think it's almost time. I've stopped fighting it. In fact, I'm going back. Tonight. To the coppice path, to the cathedral of trees and the still air and the dark soil, because deep down, I understand now. The forest doesn't want visitors. It wants guardians. And if you ever find a path with no birds, with no sound, where the trees seem too tall and the smell of rot floats on the air, turn around before you hear the breathing, before your skin begins to itch, before your blood runs sweet, because once it marks you, there's no return. And someday soon, you'll find yourself whispering to the next traveler, you left your skin behind. End of story 14. The man with bark for skin. Let's move to our last story, the trail that loops back to you. My name is Caleb Ward, and I worked as a wilderness therapist in the Appalachians for 6 years. It's a job that attracts misfits and masochist people who are either running from something or towards something they don't understand. I was the latter. I grew up with the woods, loved their silence, the way the trees don't ask questions, the way time stretches and bends out there, and that love my deep, reckless love of the wild nearly got 8 people killed. The program I worked for catered to at-risk youth. That was the phrase they used anyway. Usually teenagers from wealthy families, tossed into our care with the hope that a few months in the forest would unspool whatever knot had tangled them. Some were addicts, some violent, some just deeply, profoundly lost. We ran our treks deep in Southern Virginia, far past the reaches of cell towers, farther than GPS would work. Each group was led by 2 staffers, usually one experienced like me, one green. That fall, I was paired with a new kid named Rosie. Sharp, eager, a little too idealistic. She'd only been with the company 3 weeks when they asked us to take a group of 16s on a long-haul loop through a lesser-used portion of trail that connected several forgotten ranger outposts from the 1950s. It was supposed to be a 10-day circuit. We never made it past day 5. The trouble started the morning we passed the 3rd Markera stone obelisk, half buried in leaves and covered in yellow fungus. The map called it Checkpoint M3. There were no details, no notes, no GPS pings. From there, the path narrowed sharply. It had clearly been carved decades ago, almost gone now, overtaken by roots and vines. But we kept following it, trusting. The old blazes etched into the trees. The problem was the blazes started repeating at first. We assumed it was just careless trail marking. But then Rosie pointed out something strange. Didn't we already pass this tree with the triple slash and the gash on the left? I looked. She was right. It was identical. Same angle. Same fungus bloom. Same snapped branch above. I marked it with my knife and X. 2 hours later, we passed it again. My X was still there. We hadn't just circled. We'd looped. I pulled out the map again, traced the route, checked the compass. Everything said we were headed northwest. But that was impossible because the sun was rising behind us. And when I used the emergency GPS flare to ping our coordinates, the device blinked red. Signal lost, error, out of bounds. Out of bounds. Rosie was starting to panic. The kids were restless. One of them, Dax, joked that we were in the backrooms of the forest, and everyone laughed a little too nervously. We set up camp early that night. I told them we'd backtrack in the morning, that we'd just wandered onto a redundant trail. But I didn't believe my own words, because that night, I heard the humming. It started low, almost mechanical, like wires, vibrating in the distance. Then it turned into voices, layered, breathless whispers, hundreds of them just beyond the edge of the trees. I got up and walked 20 feet out of the clearing. The sound followed. And then, as I scanned the trees with my flashlight, I saw something that made my stomach twist. Every tree had a face, not carved, not drawn impressions. Like someone had been pressed into the bark, dozens of screaming mouths, eyes wide, jaws agape, frozen in the rings. Some were children. Some, I swear to God, looked like me. I didn't sleep. Sat up with my knife drawn. Watched the trees breathe. In the morning, Rosie looked pale and sick. She pulled me aside, said she dreamed she was walking forever through the same grove. Again and again. I woke up with dirt in my mouth. Caleb, she whispered. Dirt and something like twine. Her tongue was swollen. Her lips cracked. One of the kids, Emmy, started vomiting. Not food, just bile and something black and sticky like tar. Her eyes rolled when we tried to help her. Another Jesse refused to speak at all. Jess pointed into the woods and covered his ears. We had to get out. We turned back, took the same trail we came in on, only it wasn't the same anymore. The trees were twisted differently. The ground sloped in ways it hadn't before. My own map, drawn by hand and double-checked, no longer matched the terrain. I tried to climb a ridge to get a look. At the top, I saw the impossible. Our campfire still smoking. We had walked in a straight line for 4 hours and ended up right where we started. Rosie cried. I almost did too. That night, I didn't eat. None of us did. Day 4, things got worse. One of the kids, Jay, was missing. Gone from his sleeping bag. No signs of struggle. No prints. We looked for hours. Screamed his name. Eventually found a scrap of his shirt nailed to a tree with a black spike. Not metal, not wood. Something in between. Near the base of that tree, I found more of those faces. One of them was smiling. That night, the woods changed again. The trail became slick and sloped downward no matter which direction we walked. The stars vanished. There was no moon. Just black sky and whispering trees. Rosie stopped talking, just stared off into the trees with her lips moving, mouthing something silent. She wouldn't respond to her name. I tried to touch her shoulder, and she recoiled, hissing like an animal. Her eyes were dilated to pinpricks. At some point, Dax wandered off and never came back. The rest of the kids refused to move. They sat in a circle around the fire and began humming the same pitch I'd heard on night one. A low, vibrating drone. Their mouths stayed open the whole time. When I shouted at them to stop, they didn't flinch. And when I clapped my hands in their faces, they blinked out of sync, like they were dreaming someone else's dream. That night, I saw the loop, not a metaphorical loop, a real one. The trail bent into itself, a perfect spiral. Each layer was smaller than the last dot, and as I walked inward, I saw multiple versions of us. Flickering shapes, pale echoes, Rosie screaming in one, Jay crawling in another, in one layer. I saw myself hanging from a tree, eyes plucked out. The center of the spiral was a pit, and at the bottom of the pit was a door, not built, not man-made, just a hole in the ground where the light bent wrong. And out of that hole crawled a hand, fingers like roots, skin like moss. I turned and ran. When I got back to camp, everyone was gone. The fire was still burning, but all 6 kids and Rosie had vanished. But around the perimeter of the site, I saw new trees, fresh saplings, still damp. Each one had a face in its bark. One looked like Emmy. Another like Rosie. Another like me. I screamed until my voice cracked. Then I collapsed. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember the whisper. You can only leave by leaving part of yourself. When I woke up, the forest was silent. Not quiet. Dead. No wind. No rustling. Even the insects were gone. And in front of me was a trail. Wide, straight, leading east. I followed it. Didn't stop. Didn't drink. Didn't eat. Just walked. By sundown, I emerged at a ranger outpost near the Virginia-Tennessee border. My clothes were shredded. I'd lost 40 pounds. My nails were black. My hair had gone gray. They didn't believe a word I said, but they never found the kids. Never found Rosie. Never found the spiral. 6 months later, I left the job, left the state, but it never really left me. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the hum. Every forest smells the same now, rot and iron, and my reflection doesn't always sync with my movements. Sometimes it's delayed. Sometimes it smiles when I don't. I know what the trail is now. It's not a place. It's a mirror, a test, a punishment. And once it sees you, you're part of it forever. Last week, I found a twig growing out of my thigh. It was hard, black, smelled like mold. I snapped it off and blood didn't come out, just smoke. And underneath my skin, I saw lines forming, rings, like those inside a tree. If you ever find a trail that bends to perfectly, if the blazes start repeating, if the sun rises behind you, no matter which way you turn, do not walk further. The trail doesn't go forward. It loops, and it loops back to you. To what you really are, to what the forest always knew, because the woods aren't haunted. They're hungry. And now they're inside me. And soon they'll be inside you. To. End of last story. The trail that loops back to you.